Good morning. I'm going to continue where we left off with It Was Dusk. And if you remember in the beginning of the story, Aunt Maddie was telling Oliver that Sarah must be a real spendthrift because she always shopped at these expensive stores. Well, this will give you a little more insight into the situation. Night after night, for several weeks, Oliver and Sarah and Spotsy and Tula walked at dusk. After a couple of weeks, Sarah's stories, some funny, others poignant, Oliver began to share about himself. Because he had always been heavy-set, he had never had much of a social life. Sarah expressed surprise at this. She told Oliver he had a wonderful personality. Oliver explained that he rarely got a chance to know anyone well enough to show it. As they walked, without Sarah realizing it, she had been losing weight. One night, Oliver pointed it out. "Look at you," said Oliver. "What do you mean? Look at me what?" asked Sarah. "You must be 2 or 3 sizes smaller than you were. I mean, when we first started walking." Sarah looked down at herself. She usually wore loose-fitting dresses and sweaters to walk in the evening. The wind was blowing the fabric against her body. She seemed embarrassed. "Well, maybe a little," Sarah said. "No, a lot," said Oliver. "You look very nice." Sarah felt awkward. Then she decided a simple thank you would be appropriate. Oliver answered, "You're welcome." The following day, the mail lady delivered a package to Sarah's house. There was no return address, and it was hand-wrapped in a brown paper bag. The inside of the bag read, "Piggly Wiggly," in bold red letters. Sarah stood still a moment and remembered telling Oliver how much she loved it that the Piggly Wiggly stores had kept that colorful name and the pig as their logo. She remembered the evening they had discussed it about 2 weeks before. In fact, she even had an empty bottle of their store brand of soda called Dr. Pig. She had explained to Oliver that the reason it was empty was not because they had drunk it. She had poured it down the sink after one taste. It was awful, but she thought the name was so funny, she had placed it on top of her kitchen cabinets along with an old child's guitar and a can of Spam. She had expressed to Oliver her concern that someday the Spam, which had never been opened, would exceed its expiration date and explode all over the kitchen. But up till now, it had been holding firm. Then she looked back at the package to find out what it held. "Oh my, how lovely," Sarah exclaimed as she drew the big book out of the wrappings. "The Wildflowers of Alabama. What a thoughtful gift. It must be from Oliver." Then Sarah opened the book and saw that it had an inscription. She read to herself, "To Sarah, who is like a wildflower, making all that surrounds her beautiful, your friend Oliver." Very gently, Sarah closed the book and hugged it to her chest. "I guess I have a friend," she said, and she sat down on the sofa to page through the book. That evening, when Oliver came by, Sarah thanked him for the book. He asked if she had noticed the inscription. Sarah just looked at him and smiled. Then she replied, "I noticed it." There was something in the way she said that made Oliver feel very glad he had written it. After their walk, during which they both talked, Sarah said, "I need to ask you a favor, Oliver." "Sure," said Oliver. "What can I do?" Well, said Sarah, I have to have my car worked on tomorrow, but I also need to get groceries. Do you think you could drive me into town? It would only take me about 15 minutes once we get there. Gee, said Oliver, 15 minutes doesn't seem quite long enough to go grocery shopping. Oh, it is where I go, and I'm only shopping for one. Really, it doesn't take long at all. Sarah, said Oliver, it would be an honor. So the next day, around 9:30 in the morning, Oliver drove his car over to Sarah's. Already the car mechanic was there working on her car. Sarah saw Oliver from the window and came out. In her arms were several folded up plastic bags. What you got there? Asked Oliver. I shop at the Bent and Dent shop. You have to supply your own bags, so I make it a practice not to buy dented cans. I don't want to get botulism or something, but they have plenty of perfectly good other merchandise. I've been going there for years to save on groceries. Oliver nodded and tried to notice whether his aunt was sitting by the window watching. He did notice drapes and blinds peeked open in some of the other houses along the street as they drove by. Sarah did not seem interested. When they arrived in town, Sarah directed Oliver until he saw the Bent and Dent Shoppy, with its hand-lettered sign in Old English style. Oliver offered to come in and help. Well, I don't need the help, but the company would be great, said Sarah. Once inside, Sarah got a small shopping cart and, consulting her list, made her selections. After about 10 minutes, she was finished, and they went to the cash register. Each item had a price label. The cash register was an old-fashioned kind with buttons that had to be pushed. After each price was entered, another button was pushed, which made a ringing sound and printed the price on a paper strip. Sarah looked at Oliver and said, "Just like the old days." As the items were rung up, Sarah spread out her bags. One was from Dillard's, another from Belk's, a third from Saks Fifth Avenue, and the last one from the Macaroni Grill. She noticed Oliver looking at them in a strange way. I use these because they're stronger than regular grocery bags. I keep them and use and reuse them. Pretty handy, really, said Sarah. Makes good sense, replied Oliver. When they got back to Sarah's cottage, the mechanic had gone. Sarah said to Oliver, "Let me just check the mailbox for the bill." Oliver began to carry the bags, and he heard Sarah exclaim, "Oh, good letters!" Got some good mail? Sarah bubbled, "Letters from my kids. The mail can be so slow. Oh, let me just stop a moment and open them." Oliver watched, trying to read Sarah's emotions and thoughts as she read the letters from her children. He remembered what his aunt had said about her children hating her. "This is too good to be true. I can't believe it." Sarah was beaming. "What is it?" asked Oliver. "All three of them are coming to visit, all together." Sarah had tears running down her cheeks. Oliver handed her some tissues from the box on the countertop. "Has it been a long time since you've seen them?" he asked. "It's been 2 whole years. We've never been apart so long, ever." Oliver asked, "Why have they stayed away so long?" "All 3 are doing college or graduate work in Europe. We haven't had the money to fly them here to visit, and since they're all in different countries, I couldn't get the money to go see them. But someone gave my son a gift of money, and he found airline tickets for the 3 of them for just that amount." "So when do they arrive?" asked Oliver. Actually, it'll be in about 6 weeks. Sarah asked Oliver to wait and she ran upstairs. She brought down a triple picture frame. This is them. Well, about 3 years ago anyway, she said proudly. How come you never talk about them? Oliver asked. That is so strange, Oliver. Normally I do, or I have, but now that you mention it, somehow we just always talked about, well, different things. I didn't want to brag about my kids, and it just seemed, well... Sarah stopped and thought for a moment. You know, Oliver, we mostly talked about ourselves or about the town or just other things. It never seemed appropriate to bring them up. I mean, I love them dearly, but just as they're trying to make their own lives, so am I. I have an identity other than just being the mother of these children. That's what I used to cry about so much at night. I would be done with the day's business and dinner, and I would have time to think about how I used to be a wife and mother. And I think I used to find my identity in those things. I had to rethink my life and find out who I really was, besides being, well, just a mother now. And I guess I was just learning more who I was when you and I would walk and talk. It was different and special and personal. Oliver bent his head and gave Sarah a kiss on the cheek. Then he said quickly, I have to go. Sarah was shocked. He had never even held her hand. They had just been walking and talking friends. Well, except for the Wildflower book. Then she put her hand over the place he kissed and wondered if something was wrong or if something was very right. Oliver parked his car in Aunt Mattie's driveway and strode purposefully into the house. Aunt Mattie was sitting in an easy chair by the window. She cocked her head and looked at him quizzically. Oliver sat down opposite her and began to speak. Aunt Mattie, with all due respect to you and your friends, there's been a grave injustice done. Oliver went on to explain to his aunt the type of person he had found Sarah to be. He explained the department store bags and the reason her children were hardly ever around. He explained why she kept to herself instead of spending time with the neighbors. He explained that she had a job doing work that was sent to her over a fax or the internet, so that's why she only left the house infrequently. He explained a lot to Aunt Mattie. By the time Oliver was finished with what he had to say, he was pacing the floor like an actor delivering an emotional soliloquy on a stage. Then he looked at his aunt and saw she was crying. And we'll stop here for today and continue tomorrow with the story It Was Dusk, which I remind you is based on several real things that have happened to real people. I hope you're enjoying it. Let me know. Have a good day.